Are you worried that you'll be missing out on all those sweet treats on the holiday table this year because you're on a weight loss journey? Well, today I am part of a collab hosted by Val over at the Valerie Reese channel. And we are sharing our favorite Thanksgiving dishes. And boy, do I have a solution for you here. This is my magic maple pecan pie. It'll give you all the satisfying flavors and texture of the original, but with far fewer bites, points, or calories. So if you're in need of a dessert that you can indulge on without feeling any guilt, stick around because I'm going to show you how to make this coming up next. Hello and welcome to my kitchen. My name is Roy. I'm a home cook and amateur baker, and I'm here on this channel sharing recipes that have helped me to lose over 125 pounds, whether those recipes are mine or someone else's. Now, if you've been here for a while, you know they're usually mine. Today is no exception. And if you've also been following me for a while, you know that I have been kind of playing around with a lot of these magic pies. As you saw from the thumbnail, this is another one, and it is so good. And today I am part of a collab for favorite Thanksgiving dishes. This was started by Val over at the Valerie Reese channel. So check out her channel and the other channels that are part of this collab. They will be linked down in the description box. And my contribution for this collab is my magic maple pecan pie. Now, if for some reason you don't like pecans or you don't have any, you happen to have walnuts on hand, feel free to swap them out for walnuts. But before I get too far ahead of myself, let's go over the ingredients. I have here my cooking spray. I have a 9-inch pie plate. This is actually 9.5, but it calls for a 9-inch. And I'm going to be spraying that with cooking spray, so that way we make sure that our pie comes out. You don't want to make a pie and have it stuck in the pie plate. Here I have 4 eggs at room temperature. Everything here is at room temperature. If you've been following me at all, you know that I prefer, especially for baking, that all of my ingredients are at room temperature so they come together more easily. Here I have 3/4 of a cup of sugar-free maple syrup. I'm using the Carrie's maple syrup. I've used Vermont brand before, but whichever one you prefer to use is fine. Here I have 1 cup of pecans chopped. In the recipe, you will see it calls for a 1 cup, chopped. What that means is you measure them out first, then you chop them. So it comes out to about 110 grams if you prefer to weigh them. And often with nuts, I will weigh them just because their odd shapes make it difficult to be sure I'm getting an accurate measurement in a cup. Here I have 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar replacement, and that's going to enhance the flavor of this, give us a little more caramel, a little more chew to the texture. So you could swap it out for granulated, but it may affect the texture of the pie. Probably not adversely, but it might not have as much chew as I'm going for. Here I have 1/2 cup of plain non-fat Greek yogurt, yes, at room temperature. And here I have 1/2 cup of flour, and that's going to help bind this together. These magic pies I've been doing are based on, if you've seen the impossible pies that Bisquick used to make, this is going to approximate that, but I'm using flour instead of the Bisquick. Here I have 1/4 cup of pumpkin puree. Now it may seem odd to have pumpkin in this pie, but it is there to enhance the texture, give it a nice creaminess. You don't even taste the pumpkin. But if you are adverse to pumpkin or have a problem with pumpkin, say Andy, I'm talking to you could swap it out for more of the non-fat Greek yogurt. But I really do like the creaminess that I get from using the pumpkin puree. You could maybe even try a mashed banana. I wouldn't try applesauce, but you could try a mashed banana. I haven't tried it because I prefer using the pumpkin. But if you do try it, let me know how it worked out. Here I have 1/4 cup of almond milk, and that's unsweetened, plain or vanilla. It doesn't really matter. And anytime I say almond milk, if you prefer oat milk or cashew milk or whatever other milk, Use what you use. I'm just using almond milk because that's what I prefer. Here I have 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, 1½ teaspoons of baking powder, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And the baking powder and salt with the flour are going to approximate the Bisquick that would typically be in one of their Impossible pies. But those are all of the ingredients. Let me shuffle a few things around and we will get started. Okay, so the first step in this is I've sprayed my pie plate with cooking spray. And now we're just going to take our pecans and we're just going to sprinkle those all over the bottom of the pie plate. And then I'll just shake it a little bit just to even those out. That's all you need to do as far as the pecans. Now I'm going to set this aside and bring in my blender. Now I am just going to put all of the other ingredients into the blender here. If you don't have a blender, you don't want to use a blender, you could do this in a bowl. You could use a whisk or an electric mixer. I think an electric mixer would help to get it more uniform than a whisk does. But if you do it in a bowl, what I would do is just whisk all the wet ingredients and then add in the dry ingredients. But since I'm using my blender, I'm just going to dump it all in. I'll start with the eggs, almond milk, Greek yogurt, brown sugar replacement, flour, salt, baking powder, the pumpkin, vanilla extract, and the syrup. And I will, if there are flecks of flour sticking to the sides already, I will kind of push those down a little bit with my spatula. But we'll be scraping down the sides once or twice, depending on what we can see from the outside. So I'm going to put on the lid and just start blending. All right, so I blended that for about 15 seconds, 20 seconds. And one thing I will mention is with brown sugar replacement especially, it tends to like to clump. So you may hear it start to rattle in there. You want to get this processed until you don't hear that rattling, or at least not as much. It will melt down in the oven, but you don't want to have big clumps of it. So I'm just going to scrape the sides down, put the lid back on, and give it another blend. And that was just about another 20 seconds. That's all you really need. So let me move this over to the side here. Bring in our pie plate with pecans. And you'll see I have this sitting on a sheet pan. You don't necessarily have to, but I like to do that just in case there's any spillover. And if you're new here, I have neuropathy and myopathy, so my muscles and nerves don't always act correctly and I may spasm and spill it. So I like the insurance of having it on a sheet pan. But now all you have to do is just pour this right over the pecans. And I will scrape it out to make sure I get everything. And then you'll see there are a lot of bubbles because we did just blend this up in the blender. So it's gotten a lot of air beaten into it. So I like to take my spatula and just kind of knock some of those air bubbles out of there. Just the really big ones, you don't have to worry too much about it. I just like to have as smooth of a surface as I can, but there are gonna be some small ones, so don't worry too much. And now this is gonna go into a 350-degree oven for about 50 to 60 minutes. It does take a while for this to cook. And you will notice it's going to kind of souffle because we've got so much air built into this. But we want it to do that because once it comes out and starts to cool, it's going to collapse and it's actually going to form its own crust. So that's where the magic comes in. We didn't have to make any sort of crust. It's going to make it for itself. Now, after about 30 minutes, what I will do is check to make sure that it's not getting too dark. If it is, I will spray a piece of foil with some cooking spray and just loosely lay that on top so it doesn't brown too much more. But 50 to 60 minutes and I'll be back. Okay, so there we have our pie. I did cover it about 45 minutes in. You want the center to be set and you want a toothpick to come out not clean. It will have a little stickiness, but you don't want it to be wet. And as I said, as this cools, it will sink down a bit. But that's the problem with one of these pies is now we have to wait. You can eat it after it's cooled to room temperature, about an hour or so. But personally, I prefer letting it cool to room temperature, then wrapping it and putting it in the fridge for a couple of hours. I love the texture from a refrigerated pie. But I'm going to let mine cool completely, then refrigerate it for a few hours, and then I'll be back to give you all those nutrition facts and show you what a delicious slice of this pie looks like when it's done. So a few hours for me, but a few seconds for you, and I'll be back. I am back. I let the pie cool down to room temperature, then put it in the fridge for a few hours. I've already cut it, and I'm going to show you what a slice looks like, so you have an idea of what you will be getting. But it has that texture of like a pecan pie, but without all the fat and sugar of a typical pecan pie. And you can see, you can lift it just like it's got a crust on it. So it's very sturdy, and especially once you've refrigerated it. But there you have it, my magic maple pecan pie. And again, you could make it maple walnut if you prefer. Now I can vouch for its taste and texture. I can also vouch for how low the bite points and calories are going to be for this. So for one slice, like I have here, this is serving 8. And you could, of course, make those pieces smaller if you really want, but I like a generous portion, especially for dessert. But 1/8 of this pie is only going to be 4 Better Balanced bites or Old Blue Points. I am on the Healthy Better Balanced plan, which is equivalent to the old WW Blue plan, which is around where their current plan is. And if you are following calories, the calories for one piece of this pie would be 188. And if you are following macros, the fat would be 13.5 grams. Saturated fat would be 1.8 grams. Protein would be 7 grams. Carbs would be 30 grams. Fiber would be 1.9 grams. And the sugars would be 1.5 grams for one slice of this delicious pie. So I hope that you enjoyed this recipe and this video, and if you did, I'd appreciate you doing the usual: like, subscribe, comment, share, and hit that notification bell. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing if you are looking for recipes that can help you on a weight loss journey. I have plenty of them. It's been 2.5 years I've been doing this, so I have quite a few recipes. I also have a Thanksgiving and a holiday playlist. If you are looking for food specifically for the upcoming holidays, I will link those down below. And let me know down in the comments whose channel you came from, if you came from one of the other channels doing this collab. Speaking of which, go down to the description box and check out the other channels that are part of this collab and find a few more Thanksgiving dishes that you might want to put on your holiday table. Speaking of other dishes, I did do on Friday's video, I did a caramel apple magic pie, and you don't have to do it strictly as caramel apple. You can do it as apple cranberry. You can do it as apple and cinnamon. So you have a little variety, but that would be another great one for the holiday table. And I will card that here and a link to that down in the description box as well. Now, if you want the recipe for this, I will link directly to this recipe down in the description box. Down there is also a link to the blog itself if you're looking for any of my recipes. Also down there is my Amazon storefront. If I've ever used anything on the channel that you were interested in finding, it might be there. Also my Fetch rewards, my Built Bar rewards, and my social media if you'd like to follow me over there. I have my Instagram and 3 Facebook groups that I'm part of, so check out that description box for all sorts of information. So I think that it is time for us to have a little treat, and I hope that you'll be giving this a try yourself soon, especially for the holidays. So until next time, bye.